Now, it's been a pretty strange year, 2020. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. We've had some pretty hard hitting news headlines as well over the last 6 or 7 months. And that's also true of the SEO industry. We've had some Google algorithm update Twitters, we've had a lot of things going on. And more recently, we've had some news headlines about diversity and inclusion in the industry as well. And that's what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today. Now, that's a fairly big number. It's not a majority, but I think we're all going to agree that it's a fairly sizable number. It's from a study done by a friend of mine who surveyed the marketing industry in the UK. Now, he found that this 43% of people didn't feel their workplace was inclusive because of either gender, ethnicity, or identity. Now, what's even more worrying is this next number. That 62% of people felt that their career had been impacted or hindered in some way by their gender, ethnicity, or identity. Now, that's massive. And what's more, a US-based study found that the pay between men and women, now this is specifically in the SEO industry, the gap was 17%. And that 70% of SEOs, again in the US primarily, were men. Now, I'm running a UK-based study to find out what this gap is for SEOs in the UK. So if you are an SEO and you're listening to this, please just take a minute or two of your time to fill in the survey. I'll pop the link at the end of the presentation. But for now, back to diversity and inclusion that we were talking about a little bit earlier. Now, I'm about to show you real quotes from people in the UK industry. I reached out to them and asked for stories and quotes about their experiences of gender and discrimination in the UK. Now, this quote came from a lady in the UK who asked her manager if she could have some more experience in technical SEO. She has some level of understanding of SEO, but wanted to specialise in the technical side. And this is the response she was met with. And it harks back a little bit to what we were talking about in the US study that found that most technical SEO positions were filled by men, and the more creative content side was filled by women. This is another quote from someone else in the UK industry who was simply suggesting to redirect pages during a migration. That simple 301 redirects were required in order to kind of level out ranking and keep to the performance you're used to as best as possible in the site migration. And this was their response. Again, the manager wasn't convinced, didn't think that those 301 redirects were necessary. And he said, I'm not going to argue. It's like arguing over whose cookie recipe is better. Doing SEO is like baking cookies. Now that's gendered from the get-go. Now, a lot of people that came back with quotes and stories about this discrimination came back with a very similar issue. And that's that their work and opinions weren't trusted. And quite often, they found that other people were asked to validate their work or validate something they had said. Now, this has happened to me on multiple occasions throughout my career, and I'm more than sure it's happened to at least a few of you. And I think that's a key point in the diversity and inclusion topic. In none of those stories or examples were people stopped from doing their work, but their work was made slightly difficult by the actions of others. Now, this is a quote from a friend of mine who did the study in the UK about inclusion in the workplace. And for me, it summarises what I'm talking to you about today. There is a difference between going and being invited to a party and actually having a good time there. So I'm going to give you a couple of tips, again from people I reached out to in the industry who have dealt with this kind of thing, about how you can make your work life a little bit nicer. Now, the first and the most common advice I got when I asked people was to talk to others, whether that's other people in your industry or others in your workplace. Chances are they've experienced something similar, if not going through a similar thing. So talk to them. It does the world of good. In the SEO industry, there are some amazing communities like Women in Tech SEO, and there will be others in your specific industry as well. So it's a great place to start. Now, I'm involved in a mentorship scheme in the Women in Tech SEO group. It's designed to support you and to guide you, especially if you're only just starting out in the industry. Now, this quote here is fabulous, and it's this last line for me that embodies the mentorship scheme. Because we are taught to respect fear more than ourselves. And the mentorship scheme is hopefully designed to readdress this balance in the workplace. Now, the next tip I got off a lot of people is look after your health. I'm friends with a nutritionist who hammers this point home every time I talk to her. Because your physical health not only supports your fitness, but it also supports your mental health. Go for a run, go to the gym, just get outside, go for a walk, do something that you're going to enjoy. You can combine the last two tips. Go for a walk with a mentor, go for a walk with a friend and talk about things. And it'll help to support our mental well-being as well. Because things like this can really wear us down and they can take their toll. I mean, we spend at least a third of our lives at work, and quite often we bring it home with us too, whether that's physical work or we just bring the mental stress of it home with us. So looking after your body and your mind is key. Now, another tip I was given when I asked about this was to make sure you always have a paper trail, just in case things get really ugly. So whether that's making sure you note take in any meetings, whether that's making sure you have an email chain of what's been said, or whether that's as simple as having somebody there to witness anything if you think something could escalate. If you're faced with this kind of issue, it can seem really daunting, and it's not always clear where to start, but do anything, do something, and that can be as simple as making notes and making sure you have evidence if you absolutely need it. Now, another tip I'm going to give you harks back a little bit to the mental well-being, and that's self-care. Pamper yourself. Do things you enjoy. Go to the cinema, go for a run. Do what makes you feel empowered. Now, this quote sums that up for me. Choose yourself in a world that guilts us into prioritising everybody else. And again, you're talking about your mental health. Put yourself first sometimes. Now, we all have pressures, whether that's bills to pay, kids to feed. There's so many things going on, but make sure you cut yourself some slack and give yourself a little bit of time to you. Now, whether that's a nice bubble bath with a candle, whether that's going out to the pub with your friends, just make sure you give yourself some time, at least once a week, just to give your mind a break and yourself a break too. Now, this next tip may seem a little arbitrary, but be inclusive yourself. That's regardless of gender, regardless of ethnicity, identity, and it may even be something like talking to someone online who isn't confident talking to somebody face to face, or reaching out with a quick email to somebody who you know is going through a hard time. Reach out, be there, be a friend. And that goes for offline and online interactions. And chances are it's going to give you somebody to talk to, like our first point. Okay, on to the next tip, and that is about organising your space. So that includes your workspace, your desk, your home office, wherever it is that you work. Lots of clutter can change the way you think, the way you work, and a bit of organisation can give you a bit of space, both physical and mental. Now, this is a great quote from an American author about just that. Clutter can block you from thinking, from working, and actually affect the way you feel. So tidy workspace, tidy mind. So there you have it. There's the 6 best and most common tips for dealing with diversity and inclusion in the workplace. Now, the point of me talking to you today wasn't to kickstart debates. It wasn't to challenge or adhere to stereotypes, and it certainly wasn't to preach to anybody. The aim of this talk was hopefully to reach the 43% of people out there who are dealing with a non-inclusive workplace. And I hope I was able to offer a little bit of reassurance that there are others out there that are dealing with this. We may be in 2020, and there are lots and lots of people out there that are actively creating diverse and inclusive teams and workplaces. But this stuff still happens, whether it's intentional or not. So if you leave this session with nothing else other than that SEO girl goes on a lot, please remember that there is a difference between being invited to a party and having a good time at the party. Now, thanks for your time.